Hello there. Today I'm going to talk about Radiohead, and especially this giant monolith slab that you see in front of us, which is the crown jewel of my Radiohead collection. It's my favorite album of theirs, and one of my favorite things in my whole collection. But before that, a quick review of Radiohead. Um, I've always felt like they were one of those bands that casual fans know for one song and one song only, Creep. And since then, they have a reputation, I think, of being kind of inaccessible or difficult in some ways. Um, and I really don't find that to be the truth. I think that they are a lot more accessible than maybe the general image of them is or has been. And I've liked virtually everything they've ever done, maybe with the exception of that first album that had Creep on it. Um, so my physical artifacts of Radiohead begin with not their album Pablo Honey, which was their first one, probably their least liked amongst Radiohead fans, and by myself too. I used to own this album way back when on CD. Must have lost it or sold it or something. Never listened to it really, other than the first time. And of course, Creep remains an all-time classic. But to represent the missing Pablo Honey album in my collection, instead I have this. This is Lana Del Rey's album Lust for Life that came out a couple of years ago. What is the connection there? On this album, her last song, Get Free, was the subject of a dispute, a legal dispute between Radiohead and Lana, in which Radiohead claimed complete authorship of that song due to its similarity to Creep. And at the time, Lana said that she had offered a settlement of sorts and that Radiohead had rejected it. But then later that year, I think in summer of 2018, Lana followed up by saying that the whole thing had been resolved. So, if you listen to "Get Free" by Lana Del Rey, you'll hear immediately the similarity between her song and Radiohead's song "Creep." This whole story is doubly ironic, I think, because Radiohead themselves had to settle a lawsuit over the same song brought by members of the Hollies. And the Hollies had a great big hit song in the mid-70s called The Air That I Breathe. And if you listen to that song, you'll also hear how very similar it is to both Creep and Get Free. They're really all kind of the same song. Radiohead included the members of the Hollies on writing credits after that particular dispute was resolved. And then they went and got into this other thing with Lana Del Rey, but like I said, it seems to have been straightened out. It's always intrigued me, the concept of plagiarism in art, what constitutes plagiarism, copying, stealing, versus being inspired. I mentioned in my other video on the 7-inch singles the dispute with George Harrison's song My Sweet Lord being so similar to another one by a girl group from the 60s, He's So Fine. The judge in that case, the George Harrison case, said that Harrison subconsciously or unconsciously plagiarized, meaning he did it without knowing that he did it, and he had to pay up anyway. I don't know how anybody figures these things out, but it intrigues me, and I thought it was a good way to start my talk about Radiohead. Their second album is The Bends. Big leap forward in sound. Came out in the mid-90s, around the same time as the Britpop era of Radiohead. Blur and Oasis and Blur and other bands like it. And the sound on this album is very much in that same kind of traditional hard rock sound, but a big leap forward for Pablo Honey, and has some of their best songs on it. All of these songs are amazing, actually. And then came OK Computer in '97. This is another huge leap forward, both in their style and their sound, but still consistent with the rest of their career. Some of their themes of alienation, technology came in full force on this one. And that's what this box is that we'll look at shortly. Their follow-up to that was Kid A, an even bigger leap forward. Each one of their first few albums was like this, kind of took the world by surprise, critics and fans. Sometimes they didn't like it, sometimes they got over it. To me, it's all part of the same Radiohead universe. I love their explorations, their experimentation, but at the same time, I do feel like everything they do pretty much is accessible and enjoyable to any rock or pop music fan. A companion album to Kid A was Amnesiac, which follows some of the same themes of Kid A. Some of the music on this one can almost be considered ambient, which is another genre that I'm really fond of. Sorry about my hand shaking there. Okay. Same artist worked with Radiohead throughout their whole career, designed all these album covers, named Stanley Donen, not sure. Also Tom York, singer and songwriter of Radiohead, had a big hand in the artwork for everything that they had done, and you'll see that in the box set too. All right, next, during the George W. Bush era, came Hail to the Thief, one of their more overtly political records. Still a lot of great songs on here. No decline in quality at all, I think. Radiohead then became really famous. They've always been forerunners in the use of technology, especially internet. And for their next album after Hail to the Thief, they famously released In Rainbows on a pay-as-you-wish basis. You would go to their website, and you'd send them however much money you thought that they deserved. And many people sent them nothing and got the album for free, and that seemed to be okay with them. I paid, and I got the album here. I burned my own copy. This picture that I created for the label is a view out my front door in a rainstorm. I felt like it was appropriate. I paid £5 for this, which was about equivalent to about $10, because that was the going rate on iTunes for an album in those days. And I have never been comfortable taking music for free, downloading free music from wherever. I've always felt like an artist should be rewarded in some way for what they do, otherwise they wouldn't be able to keep doing it. Even though I'm well aware that most artists' contracts are highly exploitative and they're lucky to see even a fraction of whatever it is that I paid for their music. But still, it's just kind of been a principle of mine that I don't like to take music as just there for the taking. So, I don't know how many other people paid for this album, but I did, £5. And another great work. Their follow-up to that was The King of Limbs, which I have here in another burned edition. By this time, I was only buying albums on iTunes, and so burning my own discs. And let's see, by this time, I had gotten tired of making pictures and labels and whatnot, and I just wrote it on there in magic marker. And then their last, most recent studio album, I don't have any physical copy of. So it's interesting how my collection sometimes shows the transition from one technology to the next. So I only have a moon-shaped pool in digital format, or I believe I bought it. Yes, I think I did buy it on iTunes. One of the last things I did buy before I then switched to streaming, and so now it's available on the streaming websites. One last thing about Radiohead and their technology and online use of it. Their website has always been innovative. They've frequently have rebooted it and created a new version of it, and they just recently did that. And this is what you see if you go to radiohead.com. It's the Radiohead Public Library is what it's called now, and it's an archive of their whole career, starting, that's the Moon-Shaped Pool album cover, and these tiles would be videos and other things, track listings, and it goes back through the history in reverse chronological order. Radiohead's websites have always been great rabbit holes to just explore and see the innovative work that they do, not just with their music, but with the technology and the connection to their fans. Okay, so now this. Okay, computer. Here's the cover. It's a little hard to see, I know, but meant to represent a burning through of the part of the old cover. And I believe that they made 2 special editions of their albums just like this. I'm pretty sure Kid A has its own. Sorry for the shaking too on this table. This thing is monstrously heavy, but I'll try to reduce it. So here we have, I'll do it like this. Okay. So here is the album OK Computer, and it's presented as 3 vinyl albums, including the original songs from here. So 12 songs on there, and plus at least the same number of new songs or newly released songs or hard to find rarities, extra songs, and so forth. So that takes up this whole album, this 3 album set. Let me see through here. Perhaps I just misspoke. This may only be the songs on the original album. That wouldn't make sense. They should all be on here. I guess you could look it up. There's no songs listed on the label. Typical, sometimes inscrutable Radiohead fashion. Good quality vinyl. And then a series of images from the time of the creation of the album. I'll just go through quickly some of them. Very interesting to see versions of what would become the cover and other artwork. I know you can't see the whole thing here, but you can see most of it. All really evoking the same kind of mood, I think, through visual design. theme on this album, through most of the songs, I'd say, is travel in various forms. A lot of airplane and car imagery and so forth. Okay, so that's the album part of the package. And then here in the box also, it came with this cassette tape. You can barely see the white on white labeling. Again, brilliant for what Radiohead does. And this is a tape of rarities, many early versions of songs or unreleased songs or little snippets of studio things and other weird stuff. Really interesting things on that tape. Well worth checking out. I believe it is available on different streaming sites. Track list for all of this is on Radiohead's website too. And then these two books come with the package. This is more artwork. Some of it, again, I think from Tom York himself, some handwritten lyrics and other, I guess, poems or musings. Remember when I got this, I looked through every page, read every word that was readable. Some pages from his notebooks, it looks like. And overall, it really does paint a great, interesting picture of the creative process that Radiohead was engaged in at this time. And then this smaller book, I believe, is also Tom York's. Yeah, these are more literally, I think, his notebooks. Some early versions of the lyrics and so forth. Drawings, I think, by Tom. Concepts for the album and the songs. And, it came with a digital download code. That's what that is. Okay. Okay, computer. Okay, not okay. The extra songs, the additional songs on this set are almost an entire alternative album. Some songs actually, I think, better than some of the ones that were included on the final version, and then some you can understand why they left it off. Maybe a little bit too on the nose, a little bit too current with the pop sound of the time, I suppose, was the thinking. I don't know. I'm just speculating, but I read one review of this set where there's a song called Palo Alto, and the reviewer compared that song to the sound of Kula Shaker, a long-forgotten band. But that's an interesting reference because that does make sense that Radiohead would not want to sound like the current hip thing and would rather want to go their own way, which they did and they have ever since. So, hope you enjoyed this look through my Radiohead collection, and if it inspired you to look up their music, that is something that makes me happy. Thank you for subscribing. As of this taping, I have double digits, 10. Thank you to those who check in regularly or once in a while. And a shout out to my international fans over there in Amsterdam and elsewhere in the world. Okay, thanks for watching, and I will be back soon.